the dice. This is it. High fly ball into right field. She is gone.
Campanella talking baseball.
The grand salami.
Willie, Mickey, and the Duke.
Welcome to Fed Up, the number one podcast where you can get up on all things Federal League. Baseball is back. Mother Nature pulled the proverbial tarp over what was supposed to be the original first weekend of real baseball for the Fed. Weather cooperated in the second weekend. Lots of teams in action. Now that we're officially really in season, I want to cover kind of the flow of how the show is going to go. Typically, I record these episodes on Monday night. I edit them Tuesday, and I'll publish on Wednesday. So if you care at all about having your game covered in a little bit more depth, go ahead and throw your stats into the website. I will certainly look at your box scores, or if you just want to throw some news and notes on Twitter, I'll certainly consume it there and work that into the show as well. Certainly want a bulk of the show to be scores, highlights, reviewing results. We are going to put out our Fed Up power rankings each and every week. So we'll cover the top 10 teams according to the official Fed Up podcast. And then we'll highlight some upcoming games that we can look forward to in the coming week. Maybe hit some news and notes on the league's bulletin board. And then we'll typically have a guest for you or two to round out each week. Go ahead and get into some of the scores and highlights from around the league. Lots of teams in actions. We'll start with the American League North. One of those teams that were in action were the defending champs, the Minoka Grays. Not so breaking news. The Grays are going to be good again. Jack Nelson gets the start against the Capital City Cannons. He goes 5 innings, just 1 hit, walking 2, striking out 5. Very efficient in his time on the mound, just 67 pitches. Maybe the storyline here for the Grays, Bob Lovis appears to be healthy. He throws 2 innings, does give up an unearned run, but goes ahead and gets the save for the Grays. A couple of rookies contributing multi-hit efforts. Dustin Wolf goes 2 for 3. Jeff Hoyer goes 2 for 3. And then a couple of the regulars also performing well for the Grays. Joey Doubles back at it again, notches a couple of doubles as well as a stolen base. The Grays do come out on top in this one, 5-1. James Zapp, got to give it to him. He must have looked good because he held the Grays down to just 5 runs. But the final there is 5-1. The Cannons had another game. They played the Loons. This one was close for a long time. The final score would not indicate that, though. The Loons coming out on top on this one, 14-5. Loons also had a second game as well. They took on the Minneapolis Bombers. Bombers actually out-hit the Loons in this one, 7-5. 6 different players had hits for the Bombers, including Chad Stewart, who went 2 for 3. The Loons do come out on top, though, 4-1. The Red West Legends had their opener at Minnetonka, taking on the Saints. From Big Willow, the final from this one, Saints 8, Red West 4. St. Michael Angels also in action. They took on the South Metro Saints in South St. Paul. The Saints, for the second time in 2 games, come from behind. They outlast Pluff, who goes a very dominant 5 innings, not allowing a run. But the Saints do get some runs across late. They end up winning that game 4-2. Eric Hill and Josh Conley each with a double in that one. The Saints out-hit the Angels 7-4. Angels do make a couple of costly errors. Birthday boy Terry Knopp also adds a hit and a walk. Something special cooking in South Metro. They've now come from behind in both of their games. Hefe was happy. He was smoking cigars, drinking tequila in the parking lot. The Saints were dancing once again. They moved to 2-0. Look for them to grab a spot in our power rankings. Andy Schmidt taking a note from Fed Up and putting himself back in the lineup. He goes yard, as does Bill Hausman, who says we'll see you all at home by hitting a grand slam in this one. The East Metro Mammoth beat the RC Rockets 15-4. Staying in the American League, but moving over to the West, with the Chaska Voyagers opened up their season, taking on the Newmarket Northerns from Chaska's historic athletic park. The Northerns outlast the Voyagers in this one, winning that game 8-4. The Rockford Rail Splitters taking on the Elko Chuggers. Rail Splitters end up winning this game 12-5. TC Snappers took on the Eden Prairie Flyers. Eden Prairie was winning this game for the majority, but the Snappers stun them with 3 runs in the 7th, taking the lead and winning that game 3-1, ruining the debut for the Eden Prairie Flyers. Snappers have 10 hits in this one. Andy Larson goes 2 for 3. Dave Killian goes 2 for 3. Julian Oviedo, coming off an all-star season, also adds a couple of hits as well as a double. Tony Newman gets the start and the complete game win in this one, allowing just 3 hits and 1 unearned run. He walked 5 and only struck out 1, but does get the complete game win in that effort for the Snappers. Rounding out the American League, we go to the South, where a little bit of a shocker, the Milltown Outlaws beat the Burnsville Bulldogs 6-2. Bulldogs got off to a hot start in that one, but it was all Milltown from there, as they had 3 in the 2nd and some insurance in the 7th with another 3 spot there. Final score 6-2. Highlights for the Outlaws: Nick Davis goes 2 for 4 with a pair of RBI. Rudy Lopez adds a hit. Adam Van Sickle 1 for 1. Davis a pair of doubles. Lopez a double. Van Sickle with a double. Russell Bauer gets the win in this one for the Outlaws. He goes 4 innings, gives up 6 hits, strikes out 3. Bill Dunker, the wily veteran, comes in for an inning and does get the save. The Hastings Hurricanes make their debut, taking on the Vesely Vulcan. It was a good debut for the Hurricanes as they take the field at Veterans Athletic Complex. They had 3 in the 1st, 2 in the 2nd, 2 in the 3rd, 2 more in the 5th. Vesely does get a 2 spot in the 7th, but the final there, 9-2, as Hastings gets their first win in their first effort in the Federal League. The Webster Wildcats had a couple of games. They took on Rosemount Pipers and the Newmarket Northerns. Rosemount opened up the scoring in this one, scoring 2 in the 1st. Webster does strike back with a run in the 3rd, but an 8 spot in the bottom half of the 3rd really opened it up for the Pipers. The final from this one was 11-1. Rosemount does dime the Webster Wildcats. Don't have a score yet from the Newmarket game, but I know that Newmarket did come out on top on that one. Heading over to the National League, a very well-publicized game between Apple Valley A's and the Rosemount Piper. This one was a pitcher's duel, to say the least. Tim Scott taking on Cliff Christopherson. The A's get 1 in the 1st on a Pat De La Hunt double, and that was all they got, and that's all they would need as they win that game by a final of 1-0. The A's did have another game against the St. Anthony Norsemen, this game at Palm Field. The A's led late in this one 2-1, but a costly error by Josh Stoll led to 2 runs in the bottom half of the 6th. The St. Anthony Norsemen, Paul Morita, drives in 2 runs to give the Norsemen the edge in that one, the final 3-2. The Pipers also had a second effort. They took on the St. Paul Senators in a doubleheader. The Pipers come out on top on that one, 7-3. We covered a lot of the West games in earlier action. The Loons looked good. They get a couple of wins. The Snappers with the stunner over the Flyers. The Saints also winning a game. Just one other game to cover in the National League South. The Lakeville Lobos opened up with the Lonsdale Jokers. This game was close for much of the contest. It was tied 1-1 going into the 7th. Erdahl gets the start. He goes 6 and records 12 strikeouts. But the Lobos broke it open in the 7th with 6 runs in the top half of the inning. Certainly some timely big hits coming from Cam and Dress that opened up the floodgates. Jamie Steinberg shuts the door for the Lobos as they get off to a hot start and go 1-0, winning that game 7-1. Now that we're up to speed on all of the action, it's time for our first official power rankings. We're going to count down from the 10 spot to the 1. This is a lot like college football. You can't really be on this list yet with having a loss. So you'll see some teams omitted from this that you might expect to see on here. But starting in that 10th spot, we've got the Minnetonka Saints. They do win a game over the Red West Legends 8-4. Maybe not the strongest of opponents to open up with, but they took care of business, getting off to a hot start. I expect big things from the Saints this year. They come in at the 10 spot. At 9, I've got the Waconia Islanders. Have yet to play, have yet to make their debut, but certainly expect this team to really compete. I've got them at the 9 spot in our power rankings. At the 8th spot, I've got the Rockford Rail Splitters. Big 12-5 win over the Elko Chuggers in their initial effort from Frederickson Field. This will certainly be a team to watch in the American League West. At 8, I've got the Rockford Rail Splitters. At 7, another team yet to make their debut in the Federal League, the Tonka Bay Lakers. Giving a lot of love to those MSMABA teams that are coming over. But Tonka Bay with Jim Brower, I think they're really going to be a force to be reckoned with. I've got them at 7. At 6, I've got the late Magic South Metro Saints. They keep dancing. They keep winning. They've outlasted a couple of really great pitchers in Tim Scott and Dan Pluff. Senators come to McGuire Field for the 3rd home game in a row for the South Metro Saints. But then they travel to Castle Field to take on the Minoka Grays, and then a doubleheader at First National Bank against River Falls and St. Croix Valley. Certainly we'll see if the Saints are indeed for real after that stretch. At 5, I've got another team yet to make their debut this season. I've got the River Falls Groupers. I absolutely love their 1-2 punch on the mound with Dave Meyer and Derek Marks. They open up their season this Saturday against St. Anthony, the Norsemen at Palm Field. Looking forward to watching that team in action. At 4, I've got the Newmarket Northerns. Change be darned. They are a lot different in a lot of different ways, but it's the same old story with the Newmarket Northerns. They get off to a hot start by winning a couple of games. I've got them at the 4 slot right now. At 3, I've got the Lakeville Lobos. They do get an effort, a solid effort out of Erdahl. He doesn't get the win in this one. Lonsdale did push him all the way to the end, but the Lobos do outlast the Jokers, and I've got them at the 3 spot in our first power rankings. At the 2, I've got the East Metro Mammoth. Certainly a well-rounded team. They've got a lot of power in that lineup. They've got some great pitching. I've got the East Metro Mammoth at number 2. And number 1, someone's got to dethrone them. I've got the Minoka Grays at number 1 in our first power rankings. Jack Nelson looked great. Bob Lovis seems to be back. They've added a couple of pieces. Certainly they're going to be in that 1 spot until somebody says a couple of teams you might expect to see on this list that aren't yet. The Rosemount Pipers, they do get a couple of wins in a doubleheader. They are 2-1 on the young season. They did lose that pitcher's duel to the Apple Valley A's. The Apple Valley A's off this list as well. They dropped 2 of their first 3 games. Yes, they were 1-run contests in the last inning, but certainly cannot throw them in the top 10 at this time. The Burnsville Bulldogs lose their opener. Certainly a team that I would have had in the top 10 in a preseason ranking, but losing their first effort 6-2 to the Outlaws has them off this list. And then the Metro Loons, despite a 2-0 start, I do not have them yet on our top 10. Certainly we will find out a lot more about the Loons with their difficult upcoming schedule. So with our first official power rankings in the books, it's time to look at what's on tap for the Federal League. We've got 21 different games scheduled from May 8th to May 14th when we come back to you with another episode next Wednesday. That roughly represents about 6% of the season, so lots of baseball upcoming. Games of note, we've got Minoka going to St. Croix Valley. Should be an interesting contest. Minoka should be able to throw whoever they want to, enough rest in between those games. But they've got Capital City again. Will Capital City come back with Zap? He was able to limit them to just 5 runs in that game. Certainly could be an upset spot to watch. Capital City is another game taking on the Red West Legends as well over the next week. Moving down into the American League East, the Mammoth back in action. They'll take on St. Croix Valley as well. The River Falls Groupers will open up at Palm Field against the St. Anthony Norsemen on 5/11. The St. Paul Senators on 5/12 will take on the South Metro Saints, trying to snap that little run that the Saints are putting together at Lorraine Field. Over in the American League West, got a handful of games. The Loons back in action. I said we'd find out exactly who the Loons are. Their next contest is against the Rockford Rail Splitters. Certainly will be a game worth watching there. It will definitely shake up our power rankings. We've got the battle of the Chaska teams. The Diamonds taking on the Voyagers on 5/11. Also on 5-11, we've got the Eden Prairie Flyers looking for their first win as they take on the Newmarket Northerns. Lots of action going on in the South. The Milltown Outlaws coming off that big win against the Burnsville Bulldogs. They'll go to Lakeville. They'll take on the Lobos. The Bulldogs will have a chance to right the ship when they take on the Northfield Millers on 5-9. St. Paul Senators are also going to take on the Webster Wildcats over this next week. Lonsdale has a chance to find themselves in the win column for the first time as they take on the Milltown Outlaws. And then the Rosemount Pipers will take on the undefeated Hastings Hurricanes. In the National League, the West, the battle for Big Willow commences as we have the TC Snappers taking on the Minnetonka Mustangs. The Minnetonka Saints are taking on the Metro Loons. I already mentioned the Loons taking on the Rockford Rail Splitters, but then the Saints will also take on the Minnetonka Mustangs. So a couple of games at Big Willow, the 7th, the 9th, the 11th. Pretty much anything you want to watch Federal League baseball, you can go ahead and head out to Big Willow. A couple more contests out there. The Saints will take on the Loons on 5-13, and the Snappers will take on the Tonka Bay Lakers on 5-14 as they make their Federal League debut. Games we haven't mentioned yet in the South on 5-9, Elko is going to take on Vesely. Vesely back in action on 5-11 as they will take on the Lakeville Lobos. If you are on a team struggling to find your offensive groove early in this young season, you're going to want to listen to our next guest. Joining us now from Max Bats is AJ Hadley. AJ, welcome to Fed Up.
Sully, thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate you being on. Give us a little bit of the history. How did Max Bats get started, and how long have you been at the company?
Well, the shorter answer would be I've been involved with Max Vet for about 5 years now. Did some other stuff in my previous life, and I've known our owner for quite some time, and gave me an opportunity to really do what I love, and that is anything baseball related. So it was really a good fit. And on the history side of things, Max Bat has been around since about 2002, 2003. It was actually a branch off of what was Glacial Wood Products. My boss, Paul Johnson, his father owned Glacial Wood Products, and at that time, it's another company actually still in Bruton, Minnesota, that he has since sold off. But at that time, they were the largest wood turning company in the United States. So what that means is they had contracts with Disney making Harry Potter wands to, the Menards and the decking companies making staircase spindles and whatnot. And basically, hey, we can turn this stuff, we can turn baseball bats. And so we, started Max Bat. And, at that time, it wasn't called Max Bat quite yet. They basically came up with some generic, GWP bats, Glacial Wood Products, and also did some other, private labeling for several companies, and that didn't go so well. And were approached by a gentleman, which is, Jim Anderson, well known in the Federal League, brought the name. We had the intel, the equipment, the inventory, and Max Bat took off from there.
Yeah, and took off you have indeed. Now you are one of the 30-some approved vendors to be able to provide Major League Baseball some of their lumber. Talk to us just a little bit about that process. How do you get approved? What's involved with that?
Well, first things first, the MLB loves your check, loves your money. So we send a large amount of money to the MLB every year to be able to supply our product to the MLB guys as well as the minor league systems. Two, there's a lot of specs. A lot of the handbook on making MLB bats is a little extensive, and the things you got to do to be able to provide that product. There's some density tests you got to pass. There's some, your stain, your colors, all got to pass you can't just have any hot pink or green bats. They all got to follow the same color code unless it's, Players Weekend or Mother's Day or Father's Day. But yeah, there's a long list of stuff that we got to do to be approved, and that includes our product, straightness of grain. We can only use grains that are less than 3 degrees off of center. That's a big thing. Back in the day, there was a ton of broken bats, and the MLB took a lot of safety precautions. You see a lot more netting over the dugouts now, and they're trying to eliminate that. So they're tightening the screws a little bit on who can make MLB approved bats.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the things they're looking for in terms of some of the grain, and the technology, I assume, is really advancing, but we're not talking, iPads, where you're able to upgrade the camera, anything like that. So just talk to us, how are bats getting better, since the 80s, 90s? What are you guys doing that is different now that is reflective of some of the changes that MLB is looking for?
I think just a lot of it is, one, the quality of wood. We select the top quality billets, the raw product that we possibly can. We want these players to have success on TV. That's our little reward, right? So we want the best product that we can put in their hands. Some of the technology that has changed, you probably had a grandpa or uncle that was trying to turn a wood bat in his wood shop or his garage and had the chisel out and whatever. Well, now it's all pretty much CNC lathe. The specs, the measurements are all going to be the same, bat after bat after bat. So one, if you swing a BR1. If you order a BR1 again this year, it's going to be the exact same bat as you ordered last year. And that's, the precision of a CNC lathe is you're going to get that same product each and every time.
Yeah, so consistency, I imagine, is a major qualifier of what MLB is looking for. This isn't Roy Hobbs anymore fashioning the Wonder Bat, off of a strike of lightning, off a tree, right? This is more quality, more consistent. And the process really is heavily involved there. And if you are a baseball guy and you haven't been to one of these manufacturers, whether it be Max Bats or another, and seen the process of what you guys are doing there, it's absolutely just fun to see, but just mind-blowing how much work and craftsmanship goes into in turning out one of these bats.
You are absolutely correct. I always say there's a lot of math and a lot of science that involves making a baseball bat. Most of the raw billets that we get, they're coming from Canada. They're coming from the UP, Michigan, Wisconsin area a little bit, and as well as the New England states. So, your New York, Pennsylvania is where primarily a lot of where the maple is harvested. And I would say about 90% of the bats we make are maple, but yellow birch has really been coming on lately, and I would say that's right now 10%. It's getting a lot more common at the MLB level, just because some of the properties of that species of wood it's a good transition bat from your high school guys, your college guys that are swinging aluminum, and now you're going to the minor leagues, say, and a lot of those bats are all birch because it's got more flex to it. It's very durable. It's, believe it or not, it's a hard wood, and so that's becoming more and more popular. Maple is still the strongest. It's still the hardest. You're seeing the highest exit velocities with maple. But yeah, there's a lot of math and science that goes into making a bat from start to finish.
Give us a little bit of, I'll let you brag here a little bit. Tell us some of the players that we flip on our TV. Who's wielding some Max Bats?
Well, the game has really changed as far as the players. Back in the day, we used to brag that we had, when the Giants were winning World Series, we used to have the whole lineup up and down,
Yeah.
and, we had a lot of twins and we had guys all over the place. And now the the players and the financial and the money side of things have really changed things. You more so, we do have, the Max Muncies, the Cedric Mullins.
Yeah.
This week was really cool. I got to make some bats for Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Yeah, great.
So we're constantly, sending out samples, but really what it comes down to is you got to get these guys in high school already, at the perfect game events and, what have you, because it all comes down to the dollar. A lot of these guys are swinging bats strictly on contractual obligations. I think, like a guy like Shohei Ohtani is swinging he's swinging a Chandler bat, but he's getting paid like 7 figures to swing their bat, and that's not really our business model. Where, our business model is make a great product and at a great price, and, just that's who we're going to tailor to. We're more dominant at the minor league level, as well as, our honey hole in the amateur state of baseball, Minnesota.
You mentioned the relationship you had with Disney and the making wands for Harry Potter. I feel like that's an interesting kind of connection, because I almost feel like choosing a bat can almost be like choosing a wand, right? So talk to us a little bit about the process of how somebody should go about choosing a bat for themselves.
I would start with, there's a reason why some of our most popular models are our most popular models, is because they last. They're using a very dense piece of wood, very hard. It's very well balanced. Obviously, you got hitter levels of all kinds playing at the amateur level. Some are good hitters, some are just happy to be out there on a Sunday. So, the end loaded versus the skinny handle is probably not a good option. The medium to large barrel with a decent sized handle on it is going to be probably the way to go.
I know one of the specs that our listeners, excuse me, might be a little bit more familiar with is drop weight. And I know on your guys' site, you recommend not doing more than a drop 2. Can you explain a little bit why that might be?
We still tailor to the drop 3s. That's pretty common. But with the drop 2s, realistically, the common guy like you and I and the amateur players in Minnesota or wherever, we can't tell the difference between a -2 and a -3. It's a mind game. You think about 1 ounce, it's basically the weight of a couple quarters in your hand. You can't tell the difference. But with the wood quality, with a -2, a -1, we do quarter ounces, and you're going to be able to get a higher density piece of wood, which in turn is going to make that bat more durable. The bigger weight variation from the length is going to make that bat, not as strong. So, when guys do come in and order bats, it really is an education process. You see it every day. A young kid will come into the store and go right to the biggest barrel bat that they find because they swing this 2 5/8 aluminum bat in high school. Well, it's not the truth or the same, with a wood baseball.
So, talk to me about the entire process, start to finish. You've got a piece of lumber there, and you want to turn out a finished product. What does that piece of wood have to go through to before it gets into somebody's hands?
We have thousands of different models. Like I said, it's all run on CNC lathes. We primarily operate on 2, sometimes 3. Basically, what CNC stand for is computer numerical control, and basically it's geometry, right? So they're plugging points on a graph and plotting out the bat specs. And back in the day, it used to be all the information stored on a floppy disk, and now it's all SD card. You pop it into the computer, you pick your model, you select your billet. Those billets come anywhere from 4 pounds all the way up to 6.5 pounds. So you got to select the right billet that fits the model for the length and weight to come out. And most of the bats we're able to turn We have a new lathe within the last 5 years that came from Italy that can spin bats in 45 to 50 seconds, precisely with one cut. It's just one down the machine, and after the bat's turned, we'll give it the ink dot test. We basically use some black dye, put it on the handle, and that basically bleeds into the grain. And if those grains are straight, it passes our test. It gets weighed 4 to 5 times throughout the process. It gets sanded multiple times. One of the biggest things that we talk about is cupping bats. That's a process where some guys like cups. Basically what you're doing is you're boring out the end of the bat, or going to no cups. Well, if you're able to take weight out of the end of the bat, one, it makes it more balanced and moves the weight more to the center, and two, it also allows you to select that higher density piece of wood. Versus a no cup where you're not taking any weight off at all. And so once that process of sanding and cupping is done, we'll bring it over to our finishing building just across the alley there, and we'll stain it. It's all stained. We don't use any paint. It's all stained by hand. And then it goes through a process of, going through our spray booth. It'll get sealed with a hardener. It'll get sanded down. We'll apply those, and then it'll go through the booth again and get another coat of clear coat. So the bats will spend roughly 2 to 3 days over in our finishing booth. And once that's done, we'll bring it over and do all of our final touches, add all of our engraving. We'll include the model, the specs, the engraving if you want your name on it, the team name, what have you, and it's ready to ship.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, if you haven't seen this process done, it's a must. I mean, you drive out to Bruton and check it out, because it is absolutely, it's art, it's science, it's math, like you mentioned, and it is just absolutely fascinating to spectate and see live in person.
People, whether you're buying a bat at Dick's Sporting Goods or our store, and you really truly sense, get appreciation for what just happened and going to make that bat. We give tours all the time, and people are just absolutely amazed. It's not as simple as just grabbing any old piece of wood, throwing it in a lathe, and boom, I got a baseball bat. It really is a process, and we take a lot of pride in putting out an excellent product.
I know my team absolutely loves your product. It's certainly very high quality. I wish it doesn't matter what we're swinging if we're not able to make contact with it, but certainly.
I always say we're going to give you a good product, but we do not include the operator manual.
Yes.
But, and that's one of the things too that really, I think, separates us from everybody else is whether you're the Apple Valley A's or my team, the El Rosa Saints, or Max Muncy, playing for the Dodgers, is you're all going to get the same quality of wood. Whether you're a T-baller or softball player, we make softball bats as well. You're getting the same wood. It's all going to pass MLB approved quality bats. That's going to everybody, not just MLB guys.
Just one more way that you can look and feel just like a big leader by using Max bats. Certainly appreciate you being on, AJ. I understand you have a gift for some of our listeners.
Yeah, so for your podcast listeners, we're going to do a little promo for you guys. If you go to our website, maxbats.com, and use the promo code FEDUP, as in the name of this podcast, once at your checkout, you're going to get a 20% off anything in the store.
Wow, that's very generous of you. Certainly appreciate that, and certainly appreciate you being on and just giving us a little bit more insight into what goes into making those products. AJ, really appreciate your time.
Hey, absolutely, Stoll. Thanks a lot.
That's all the time we have on this edition of Fed Up. We will be back with you next Wednesday. You're going to want to tune in. We have special guest Matt Meyer on the program. We will also have more scores, highlights, and, of course, an updated version of our power rankings. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.